judge, so I'm not sure of the exact date.
Yeah, I'm an Aquarius.
You wanted to be a judge. Now, why?
Basically because when I was a kid at grammar school, you know, we wore the
Grammar school, upper class.
Oh, yeah. Which one did you...
Uniform.
No girls there, 500 boys. We had a woman of 35 cleaning test tubes, and every kid was in love with her. That was the only female we saw for 6 years. But no, when I was going to grammar school in London, everybody were after the white-collar jobs. You know, if you got a job in a bank or a lawyer's office, and that was a good job. I mean, a bad job was TV, newspapers, you know what I mean?
Or digging ditches.
Oh, that was even worse. Sure.
So you finally finished up doing what? Oh, when you came out of this grammar school, 15, 16?
No, I stayed on. Actually, I got through to the university, but I didn't go because we couldn't afford it.
No scholarships in them bad old days.
I got the A-levels and everything, but we just couldn't afford it. In fact, the teachers said to my father, we can get him some grants if you can pay the rest to go to Cambridge. My father said, I can't even afford the fare to get to Cambridge, so that was that. I got a job in an insurance company because it had a good pension plan.
How old were you then, 17,
17,
18?
yeah. I'm due for the pension about another 25 years.
£8.3 and tuppence a month.
Oh, sure, exactly. That's exactly it. I'm glad you're from Britain. You understand these things.
But that's funny, and you approved that at the time. I'm going to get a white-collar job in an insurance office because it's got a good pension plan.
Oh, yeah. Used to wear a grey suit and a black hat when I was 18 years old. Luckily, I was saved by the army. I had to do 2 years in the army.
In the national service.
Exactly. Went to a boardroom or a meeting or whatever it was, an induction board, and they said, "What would you like to be in?" And I said, "I want to be in the Air Force." And they said, "Second choice." I said, "Navy." They said, "Obviously third." So sure enough, I did 2 years
in the army. Good fun in the army?
It was, when you look back on it.
Yeah.
You know, I was a surveyor and all these other things that they get you to do. And I was in the army during the invasion of the Suez Canal crisis, so I got halfway down the Mediterranean and came back. They called off the war.
I remember.
And then I was in also for the Hungarian uprising, and we had to put up all the Hungarians coming over and things like that in Britain.
That was 56, 57, right?
Right,
55,
yeah.
56, somewhere around those.
55 to 57.
Then you became a bobby.
I became a cop in the London docks, and only because it was paying £22 a week. The art job I really wanted was paying £6.10 a week.
Yeah.
And I was, you know, I was wanting to get married and have 57 children at that time. So
right away in a grungy little house somewhere.
Oh.
Eh? Weren't they awful, these houses in London?
Yeah, to be indelicate, we had a toilet outside.
Yeah.
You know, didn't have a lock on the door, but nobody wanted to steal it.
Anyway, on the docks, you'd get your £20 a week plus all kinds of odd fiddles, wouldn't you? No fiddles?
Not too much of that. The British police force at that time was...
Oh, I thought you were dock police. Oh, you were legitimate Metropolitan Bobby?
No, I was dock police, but they're all the same. They all dress the same, look the same, talk the same. And, no, they would... You know, it's sort of a misconception, but I think the British police, not to play them against the Canadian police or anything, are pretty upstanding on the whole. We had respect. That was the main thing.
That's right. I like to see a man who, like you, who supports the establishment, because after all, you just about own the bleeding establishment now. You're a successful entrepreneur.
Well, if you want to get into, you know, political things, almost not really political, but with a small p, you know, any problems you have with crime and punishment, I don't think it's the fault of the police forces. I think you have to go beyond that and get to the lawyers and get to the judges and get to the courtrooms themselves.
Biggest trouble we have, isn't it?
Oh, sure.
Somebody's given me a note. Have cartoons on camera. Whip up some. I said to him this morning, do me instant cartoons. He said, no, that's funny. Show us some out the book. That's what you said. Slap up some cartoons. If he can't talk, how do you know his name is Ralph? That's very good. Hold it again for some of the relatives of some of the crew, because they're pretty slow. If he can't talk, how do you know his name is Ralph? Flip it. Quite good. Is that the same one? How's he feeling? I badly need a pair of kidneys. That's cruel.
Oh, sure it's cruel, but every time I have to fill in my driver's license about donating organs, I think about things like that. I think the doctor's sister maybe needs something.
Next one.
Got one? That's all?
You got one?
That's all.
Is that all?
Oh, he does?
We've run out of cartoons and he's run out of talk. Seem like a nice fellow. I wish you well. Unger.
I'm glad to meet you, Jack.
It's not an English name, is it?
No, no. My mother's side is French, my father's side is German, and that makes me something.
And that's why you called him Herman.
No, they thought of that. The syndicate thought of Herman. They thought it was a funny name.
The first treasury of Herman. Subtitle, strictly from Unger. Thanks very much.
Nice to meet you, Jack.
Next, back to the old bash, bash, bash with John Rodriguez from the Nickel Belt, the man who's mad at the Liberal government, at the Tory government, no doubt. And he's an NDPer, and he's quite a tough guy. After the break. John Rodriguez is the Labour critic for the NDP in the House at Ottawa. John Rodriguez is a very outspoken chap. John Rodriguez, I want to ask you this question. Is your vote essential, and the vote of your party essential, to enable the new-found spirit of Pierre Trudeau to throw the Tories out right now?
Well, I think this comment of Trudeau's, this newfound spirit, as you refer to it, to throw the Tories out, is a perfect example of swamp draining. When the alligators are snapping at your ass, you drain the swamp on them. And you've got an alligator right here in Vancouver, Phillips, that's snapping at Trudeau's backside for the leadership. Then there's this chap, Axworthy. Then there's old Blue Eyes in the Erie Towers of Bay Street, John Turner. And then there's Big Mac. He's now in the boardroom of McDonald's. Right.
He's the man the power group want to bring back.
That's right. So all of these alligators are snapping. So Pierre Trudeau has now become a classic agronomist. He's draining swamps like crazy.
But you know, it doesn't really make sense even at that, because I'm quite convinced in my own assessment of the guy that he doesn't want to stay anyway. And once the referendum thing is out the way.
Well, he has, I think, some commitment to his party. I mean, I think he has that, and I think he wants to step out of the party on his own terms. He doesn't want to be pushed out.
He is a man of considerable pride and dignity.
That's right, and I think a man of considerable ability and intellectual capacity.
A lot of people felt he really belonged to your party anyway in the early days when he was an NDPer, and you'd have welcomed him with open arms.
Well, in those days, but then he got recycled, and you know, we have no use for retreads. They're dangerous on the roads.
Just let me think.
They don't hug the corners.
They don't.
Especially when you're making a left turn.
Very good. You're full of wit this morning.
Well, it's, you're bringing it out, Jeff.
You're almost as bright as Stuart Crafty can be in some occasions.
I'm sure there's some Scottish blood in my veins.
Now, more business. I noticed that Atke is saying he's going to take some money out of the unemployment insurance fund to help the boat people. Is that what he said?
Well, I don't know if he's taking it from the unemployment insurance fund to help the boat people.
The government plans to use $31 million that has not been spent on employment programs to help finance its $110 million program to settle Indo-Chinese refugees in Canada. Now, do you approve of that?
No, I do not approve of that. And
You're against the boat people?
No, it's not that I'm against the boat people, but I'm against taking $31 million from employment funds, which are to assist unemployed Canadians to get jobs and to find jobs and to train them for jobs at a time when we're going to enjoy, all the predictions are, very high unemployment rates in the coming year. And it seems to me that he should go to the happy hacker and Treasury Board and see if he can get some money from the government for that program. He shouldn't take it from the unemployed.
You approve of the expenditure, but not from unemployment program money?
That's correct.
You've just come from, where were you doing this UIC thing?
I was down in Kelowna.
Kelowna. Many ordinary people, NDP supporters at that, are very perturbed by what they regard as rip-offs. And the Auditor General said something like $300 million improperly paid out and something like $70 million improperly withheld from people who should get the benefits. Why can't the NDP go along with cleaning up rackets and unemployment insurance?
First of all, let me correct that. It's $280 million in overpayments.
Right.
Now, 108 million. This is news media didn't give this the hype. 108 million of that overpayment was caused by employers who incorrectly filled out the separation certificates. In other words, there was no cheatery-pokery on the part of the claimant. There was the cheatery-pokery on the part of the employer, either deliberately to bring the fund to its knees, because they see unemployment insurance as a disincentive.
Or sloppily to get themselves off the hook with the employees on a nightly basis.
Absolutely. The New Democratic Party says that when you start hacking away at the unemployment insurance program, you're not dealing with the problem, you're dealing with the symptom. And it's a good diversionary tactic for a government under attack to deal with symptoms rather than attack the problems. And the problem in this country is we're exporting far too many resources in an unrefined and unmanufactured state. And the jobs are in that area, not in the ripping of the stuff out of the ground. And until you start challenging the power structures, we're going to forever have to put people on unemployment insurance.
You are a socialist, by definition, an NDP.
Yes.
Some form of middle-of-the-road socialist, right?
Okay, Jack, that's your description. I'll go
Well,
on.
give me your description.
Yeah, that's fine. Middle of the road. I'm a person who believes that government has a place to play in the boardrooms of the nation. I believe that government has to plan the economy. I believe in economic planning on the part of government.
And you believe there's some room for some free enterprise?
That's right, a mixed economy.
A mixed economy. The fact remains, will you admit to me, John Rodriguez, that interest rates in this country must necessarily be at the American level or a little bit above, or we're in trouble? That Crosby is doing what he has to do, which will affect employment?
We do not believe that the interest rates in this country must parallel the increase in the interest rates in the United States. Absolutely not. There are some very tough decisions that Mr. Crosby can make.
What are they?
Well, for example...
Cut government expenditures?
No, one of the things that he can do is to enter into some form of currency control. What creates a great deal of the deficit in our current accounts is the fact that so much in interest payments, in dividend payments, in license fees leave this country. And every European country, by the way, has some form of currency control.
Britain still has it.
That's right, a form of currency control. And we have to do that. It seems to me that you can't...
That's highly politically unpopular.
Towards whom?
Even with the ordinary people in Canada.
No.
What,
Why would it
can't go to Hawaii, can't go down to Florida, can't get money for travel?
Well, I think that you can...
We had a couple of $3 billion down on the holiday exchange.
I'd like Mr. Tough Guy to be tough with the people who can afford to go to Honolulu and Florida. We have a beautiful country here, and maybe we could...
Oh, workers here go to Honolulu.
Well, I'm saying to you, Jack, that if you're talking about being tough, I would prefer you take tough measures with those people who have extra spending money to go for a holiday to Honolulu or to Florida or whatever, rather than taking tough measures on the Medicare system, taking tough measures on the unemployment insurance, the people who can least defend themselves.
You're suggesting we cut our coat according to our cloth, and not many Canadians are willing, they won't even go for increasing the price of gas for conservation purposes.
But there is no parallel between increasing the price and conservation, Jack. You know alcohol and cigarettes have been a favorite way of increasing taxes and increasing the price, but people have they're drinking more than ever. People
Speak for yourself, John.
Well, I mean, we see the consumption levels.
Yeah. I'm glad I touched neither alcohol nor cigarettes.
That's right. I've always said if I'm going to take up any vices, they'll be major ones.
And I lie a lot too, John. I don't mind telling you. Now, John Rodriguez is here. Why should I nag him? Why don't you nag him? He's the expert on Chile. He used to be an expert on Inco.
That's right.
Jobs being exported,
That's
using
right.
Canadian money to exploit workers in South America and creating mass unemployment in Canada.
Exactly. And forcing workers into a strike position.
Yeah, I tended to believe much of what you said on that. Used to be a worker myself.
Well, you sound like you must have been a Labour Party member until you came to Canada and saw where the bread was buttered. Is that true?
Never joined a political party in my life, nor would I ever. I can't find one that's socially, politically, philosophically, or morally acceptable.
Oh.
Questions? How's that? Don't you think I'd have been a good politician?
Well, I think you are.
Let's play at it.
What's this dirty tricks thing that's going on in...
Social credit, I got to tell you this. Social credit in convention today and tomorrow are going to sit down and write a resolution, an ethics resolution. And that is going to say, if they do it my way, thou shalt be honest. That's all they need.
No, I think they needed just 1,700 Rosemary Woods to keep their collective feet on the tape machine for 17 minutes.
That's right. I'd forgotten Rosemary Woods. After the break. I want to give Joe Clark some credit. You might do too. He looks good on the televised coverage of the House of Commons. You know that?
Yes. No
Do you know
doubt
he
about it.
even looked good as he ate crow in the Israel affair?
Well, I'm prepared to give him full marks if he'd eat crow on the Petro Canada thing. I think he's...
You'll give him full marks on the Jerusalem thing. Stupid mistake, bold recovery.
Yeah,
Honest
okay.
statement.
Yep, okay.
And old Stanfield wrote a beautiful report on it too, didn't he?
Well, I mean, what else? I mean, what else? Did Bob Stanfield have to go to the Middle East to come to that conclusion?
Yeah, I think that was a justifiable political gimmick. Yeah. But you're dead on. I mean, you're dead against any separation of the money-making parts of Petro Canada.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Are you dead against using the income tax system to give Canadians a $100 share in Petro Can?
Well, look, we own it already, Jack. Why should I exchange collective ownership for selective ownership?
Well, because when you get your $100, you can sell it back to the big boys in the market and they'll own it all over again.
Yes, but if you saw the plan he's got in mind, that the taxpayers will take over all the debt that Petro Canada owns. So, in effect, the guy who's got the $100 share has to pay more taxes to pick up the debt that Petro Canada will accept.
I get the point, but don't you get the feeling that regardless, and this is the issue on, will Petro Can be the issue on which, oh no, it's a non-confidence vote that Trudeau wants, isn't it?
That's right. Well, he's got what is called an opposition day on Tuesday, and he can attach a non-confidence motion
to that.
You see.
Is there any hope of him turning over the government?
Look, the last time there were 3 Liberals missing. One of them could not make it because he had had surgery on his thumb and he was hospitalized for 2 days. The other one had driven 2,600 kilometers from Newfoundland and got late for the vote. And the other one, his mother-in-law, with whom he doesn't get along at all, had a reunion, and so he couldn't make it to the House to vote. And now I ask you, does that show you a verve and a resolute decision to nail the government?
No, but at the same time, just imagine, supposing the mother-in-law goes away, the thumb is cured, and the other guy is there on time.
Oh, I'm sure there'll be one with an ingrown toenail.
Just suppose. Here we've got this dedicated little group of NDPers. How many?
26.
2 million votes, and you only get 26. It's very poor.
Well, we're not on PR, as you know.
Proportional representation. Do you just see what would happen if you voted solid with solid Liberals and a couple of Socrats? And you'd be back in the middle of an election campaign with no money?
Well, I think, Jack, to be looking at it, I think for us, and I can share this frankly with you, I think that we, the New Democrats, must be the cobra to the Liberal, we must be the mongoose to the Liberal cobra. And he's very vulnerable at this time, and so the mongoose must strike. But will you strike at the Liberal cobra, or will you escape for the moment and let him not defeat the government? Well, I don't think that, you know, that's, it seems to me strategically, I mean, I think that for us to grow, the Liberal Party must die. And I think at all opportunities we must show our desire, if you want, to make sure that certain things are done in this country, and if it means Liberals have to support Tories in a vote, let them do it. Fair enough. Calls, please. Go ahead to John Rodriguez from the Nickel Belt.
Yeah, okay. I'm an NDPer, okay, provincially and federally. And I'm an avid Canadian. I just want to make some comments to John about the thing he said about Canadians should be spending their money in Canada because it's a beautiful country, okay? I am a businessman, self-employed. I have been for a number of years. I look forward to working 350 days a year and spending 2 weeks down south, okay? I make this money. I'm a Canadian veteran. I fought 2 years in Korea. That's my privilege. I hope the interest rate stays where it is at 15, maybe higher, so the Canadian dollar can come back up, equal with the American dollar, so we can spend our money and go where we'd like to go. I've seen this country back and forth a dozen times. It's a beautiful country, but I would like to visit other places. And it's my right to spend my money where I would like to go.
John Rodriguez.
Well, I'm sorry, but this gentleman puts forward his view, but every time the interest rate goes up, it creates havoc for people whose mortgages are being renegotiated. Some are now, the interest rate is up about 14.75%. They got it at 9.5. Now they have to renegotiate at 14.75. It means about $100 more a month to payment on the mortgage. Rents are also going to spiral. Workers are no longer going to sit back and take 7% when inflation is double-digit, and in effect we'll get into the whole spiral again of catching up and staying ahead. So what this gentleman is talking about is destroying this country economically that he fought to survive. And I want to say that you've got to give up a selfish short-term interest until the country gets back on its feet economically speaking. I'm sorry, but I've got miners that take risks every day of their lives, and they go down on the ground for 45 years. And the furthest they get to a holiday is maybe go out in the bush and enjoy themselves with a gun hunting. And I think that, that it's time those who have in this country and who've gained the most from this country start giving up a little bit. Well, not asking the poor to constantly make the sacrifices. I'm sorry, but I got to be blunt with you.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, I find Mr. Rodriguez, both his attitude and the things that he's saying, very refreshing. And Jack, you're sitting across from him, and I'm very pleased that the last caller mentioned that he was NDP. I'm very pleased with the way that he presented his point of view. And I find that tremendous number of people who advocate the policies of the New Democratic Party have the same attitude and manner of expression as the previous caller. And Mr. Rodriguez expressed himself in a...
Okay, he accepts the praise. You don't have to say it 10 times.
No, what I would
have you a question?
Rodriguez to do is
a New Democrat.
A little bit about his background, his personal background.
Okay, tell us your background. What one?
All right.
John,
I was born and raised in Guyana.
Guyana,
yes, which is beside Venezuela. And I grew up there, was educated there, came to Canada in 1956. I was 18 years old, and I started teaching in Toronto and St. Catharines, moved to Northern Ontario, where I taught, was active
You're a school teacher.
Yes.
I had liked you up to now.
Well, Jack, you've got the benefits of having gone through an educational system. You should at least be thankful. Look at where you are today.
It wasn't this one.
Well, now knowing that you speak neither of Canada's official languages, look how far you've gotten in life. Anyway, and became interested in local politics and in teacher politics. Joined the party, the NDP, in '62, and was nominated in '72, was elected in '72, and re-elected in '74, and again in '79.
Good.
I think you're a credit to the Canadian political system, and at some time you should consider going for the leadership of your party, and I say that sincerely.
You're probably bilingual.
Well, I speak some Spanish and some French. I thank the gentleman for his very charitable comments. I'm very pleased to serve the people of Nickel Belt. I'm committed to them, and I think the best service I can do for the people is to stand up and constantly demand an accounting and put forward new ideas. Also, I'm pleased with our leader. I'm very, very pleased with the job Ed Broadbent's doing, and I support him 100%.
John Rodriguez, the Nickel Belt MP, your questions after this commercial break. Go ahead to John Rodriguez, NDP MP.
Good morning, Mr. Webster and Mr. Rodriguez.
Good morning.
Before I go any further, I say first I'm an NDPer, a strong NDPer. I feel that the only party that talks and makes sense without trying to beat around the bush. You get to the point, you say it, and I respect you for that. In this country, first of all, I'm a minority group in this country. My parents came from Asia. I cannot see in this country of such vast, enormous wealth, potential, how we can sit back and allow ourselves to get into the position we get into. What I'm trying to say is that it seems that in Canada, in the history of Canada, it always seems that we're always scared to invest. We're scared to work. We don't want to work. We don't know what it's like to be without because we've been so abundantly resourceful.
Well, your NDP friends are so loquacious. I wish the gentleman would ask you a question.
Okay, fine.
It's your show, Jack. I can't tell him that.
Okay, put it this way. We've always talked about stopping immigrant groups from coming into this country.
Yes, carry on.
We've always talked about stopping immigrant groups coming to this country to work. Why don't we do it the other way around and open it right up and start allowing people to come to this country working, and maybe the people in Canada might get off their asses and do something about it. Might try to help this country for what it's worth. Let's face it.
Here's a gentleman who wants to open wide the doors of immigrants. Now, give me two answers to that question. One, are you in favour of it? And two, with your close knowledge of the working man, is he in favour of it?
Well, with tongue-in-cheek, Jack, now that you and I are here, I'd like the doors closed.
Close the doors. That's
now that the horses are in.
That's one of our standard answers as newcomers to the country. Now, seriously.
Well, seriously, I first of all do not accept the suggestion in the gentleman's question that Canadians don't want to work, that somehow or other we're lazy. That isn't true at all. In my area, the nickel workers were so productive and so hard-working that they ran up a 400 million pound surplus of nickel in over a period of 2 years.
So you're talking about one aspect. You're talking about one aspect. Let's talk about Canada in generally. It's known through history. How do you think we get this foreign investment into this country? Why have the Americans got their finger into us so much? It's because in the 1800s, early 1900s, people were scared to invest. So they got the American money.
No, that's not the question we're on.
The question is that we cannot open the doors to immigration en masse because at the moment the economy is in a shambles, so we're not creating enough jobs for the people who are at the present moment seeking jobs, and all we'll be doing is compounding the problem.
If you take Stats Canada, which I'm sure you must be a part of, you'll find that immigrant groups in this country are the Chinese, Japanese, East Indians, Puerto Ricans, whatever, Portuguese, whatever the case may be, Greeks, have got the lowest rate of social assistance than any other nationality in this country. Now, that in itself shows you that they're the people who would go out and work out in the boonies. They're the people who want to work for $3.50 an hour regardless of what they have to show for it. They're willing to work because they know what it's like to be without.
Yeah. Well, they're there on social assistance as well, but they're there in proportion to their numbers in the country. And I want to say to you that I do not agree with the suggestion or the question that you've put in the form of a statement that in effect we should open the doors to immigration. I don't think at this point in time that would be a wise thing to do.
I mean,
the point being that the average member of a normal society like ours is perhaps not as progressive, not as liberal-minded, and prepared to share what he has if it means unemployment or hardship for him, is he?
Well, I don't see why.
Housing hardship.
Well, I think he's prepared to share things. I think that the Canadians are very generous people, and they share. But I think that charity he recognizes also begins at home, and sharing in terms of creating hardship, extreme hardship for his family. If he doesn't have a job, he has to be concerned about that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the boat people are terribly welcome, and so many thousands have been sponsored by individuals, but there's an underlying fear of people. There is, you know, John.
Well, there is.
Sponsored, nominated, and the multiplier effect of the relatives and whatnot. And people are, like it or lump it, nervous about it.
Yeah.
Before I go, I'd like to say one thing. Yesterday I heard Mr. Lowy say on the TV that apparently the Americans have got a federal deficit of $14 billion. I don't know if you heard this comment or not by Mr. Lowy. He stated that the Americans have got a deficit of $14 billion, a federal deficit of 230 million people. Do you know what our federal deficit is? 11 billion.
Mm-hmm.
23 million people. I'm glad you're such an alert observer of the program. What we did yesterday, John, that was quite fascinating, we took practically the whole speech that Lougheed made to the Board of Trade in Vancouver, in which he said to Ontario, your country, our prices for oil are else. And it was an eye-opener to see the thing uncut and untwisted by newspapers.
But Jack, we mustn't, and this gentleman, we mustn't get away from some realities as well. Now, I would be the last person to take statistics from Peter Lougheed's speeches. I mean, I'd have to take it with a pinch of salt. But in the United States, there is no Medicare program, and individual Americans pay a very, very high price personally for sickness in the family. God help them if it's terminal. They take second mortgages on their homes. Women give up their children for adoption because they can't pay the hospital bills and the doctor's bills for the care of their children. Now, I mean, there is an extreme, you go into the southern United States, and I'm sorry, but black Americans are living in the same conditions in the southern United States that they lived 15 years ago and 20 years ago. The housing is absolutely atrocious. I'm sorry, but they have very serious social problems.
Matter of fact, I respect that answer. It's a very good one, because our standard of social support, no matter what it costs, is vastly superior on the overall average, excluding some native groups, much higher than the States.
That's right. And
but can we afford it?
Well, we can't not to be able to afford it.
Webster and John Rodriguez, thanks for your call. After the break. From Rossland, BC, to John Rodriguez. Go ahead, please.
What most Canadians are worried about right now is the increasing cost of living, or inflation, as you call it. And the guests you've had in the last week or two, the experts, so-called experts, have implied that by raising the interest rates, we will have flicked the inflation or slowed it down enough to make it livable by spring. That, in other words, they're saying that by spring we'll have inflation licked. And what I'm trying to understand is this, and correct me, I want to know where we're wrong. If they raise the interest rates, the prices of houses are up, the cars are up, that's the main part of the economy. People will be unemployed, there'll be much more unemployment, there'll be greater expenditures for unemployment, for welfare services, for all the other services that the government provides, and in that way they claim the inflation will be down and the Canadian dollar will strengthen.
All right.
Is that right?
That's what they claim, yes. They cool it off, and they hope the interest rates might drop a little next year. Now, do you have a question? Do you want John to respond?
The question is, I think that that the interest is. Why would the interest rates going up solve it when, if you put them down, then the people will be able to continue in Canada will continue to get loans for houses, will continue to be able to buy houses.
Okay, we've got the question.
And the Canadian dollar will weaken, of course, but that will put a pressure on not buying
foreign goods.
Yeah. Now, where am I wrong in figuring?
Well, I don't know who you had on.
That's the standard explanation. Read a number of economists.
Well, I think certainly the interest rates going up will fuel inflation. There is no doubt about it. I mean, when the mortgage interest rate is renegotiated with homeowners this moment, it's locked in for 5 years. Now, I know there is a law of science that says whatever goes up has to come down. And I've lived in Canada now 27 years, 23 years in this country, and I have never yet seen interest rates come down. Once they go up, they stay up. They very seldom come down.
That won't solve inflation.
And it won't solve inflation, and that's why we argue that the interest rates ought not to be increased in step with the American interest rates.
Well, the standard free enterprise explanation for that is quite simple. It says that people called arbitrageurs, if there is not a tracking between American and Canadian interest rates, those in control of large sums of free money in this country promptly whip it out to the United States and loan it out in U.S. funds, depriving Canadian industry and all the rest of it from the use of that money, and also preventing investment in this country at the highest interest rates by money from outside. Is that not sense?
Well, that is what they're saying, but in effect there are ways you can combat that, Jack, and one of the suggestions we've made is some form of currency control.
Is that your party's position?
That is the party's position.
I don't remember anyone saying it before.
Well, it's part of our industrial strategy, which Ed Broadbent laid out during
Ed Broadbent is prepared to sit as you are and say, we want currency controls. We want to stop the international financiers from fiddling with Canadian dollars, or we want Canadians to stop putting good foreign exchange down the holiday drain.
That's right, and the other thing that we're suggesting as well, Jack, that we have to look at is the cost of energy, because don't forget there is offshore oil which comes into eastern Canada. So what we must do is build that pipeline from Montreal down into the maritime regions and supply them with gas, and not sell the gas off to the United States.
Peter Lougheed told us yesterday that there is $2 billion a year in additional foreign exchange revenue available for Canada, particularly Alberta and BC, in the immediate sale per year of gas surplus to our requirements. Now that would do a lot to meet some of our deficits. Is that traitorous or treasonous to suggest selling more gas to the States?
Well, I think that what is important is to make sure that this country becomes self-sufficient in energy, and one of the ways is to ensure that that gas gets distributed into eastern Canada. And at the moment, we don't have the pipelines for gas from Montreal into the Atlantic region.
Mr. Lougheed has made it perfectly clear that he ain't going to subsidize ridiculous industry in Ontario.
Well, that's the naive position of Joe Clark, that he thinks he can be Prime Minister of Canada and not have confrontation with the leaders of the provinces. Of course you're going to have confrontation, but so be it. Gauntlet is dropped and you have to join battle.
John, this Lougheed thing seems to be more of a crisis to me than the Levesque thing.
Well, in effect, Peter Lougheed is as destructive to the unity of Canada as René Levesque is with his separatist referendum vote.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Webster?
Yes?
Can I ask a question on the Lougheed?
Sure.
Sure. I sure wish that you would read Sir Wilfrid Laurier's speech when he introduced the bill, Bill 69, to create the provinces of Alberta and Saskatchewan. And Mr. Lougheed, I don't think, has ever read it. And Alberta and Saskatchewan were creations of the Confederation. In other words, even Quebec owned part of the Northwest Territories that the two provinces were created out of. The land was bought from the Hudson Bay Company and the Confederation.
But what's the point?
Pardon?
What's the point?
My point is that Mr. Lougheed he talks federation and nationality and so on, and national interest, but he's forgetting that morally he's obligated much more than he's consenting to.
Okay, I've got to leave it at that. Perhaps not terribly clear. Time for a break? Time for a break. John Rodriguez, NDP, Nickel Belt.
You know, when I first came...
Hi, Charlie. Hi, Charlie. Hi, Charlie. Hi, Charlie.
My thanks, John. Tell Mr. Broadbent that should love to have him on the program soon about currency controls.
Fine. Okay.
See how the wealthy workers out here like that one.
Fine. Thanks, Jack.
Thank you, John. Linda, Monday.
Monday, a look at the old courthouse.
A particularly personal look at the old courthouse.
Right.
I'm going to take the art gallery to court, all right. I'm going to sue them if they destroy that building and other things. God bless the art gallery. I wish I were along here. Monday, 9 a.m. precisely.